Women find strange things while cooking. The egg in his hand was actually empty. Just a little squeeze and it turns into a pile of debris. Then he picked up another egg. I didn't expect this one to be empty as well. The woman suddenly looked confused. He crushed the whole box of eggs. It's full of hollow eggs without exception. That night, when my husband came home, Alice quickly told him the matter. Unexpectedly, her husband yelled at her uncharacteristically and said it was all a hallucination she had. The husband's move made Alice suspicious. It also reminded her of when she first moved to the community. The neighbors Margaret once said a strange thing. At that time, Alice didn't care. It's even weirder now that I think about it. This is said to be the happiest community in the world. The basic necessities of the residents are provided free of charge by the community. It can be said that you can eat and drink without worry. Worry-free life, but the men here must go to work for a technology company called Victory. And all of them were programmers. Women's lives are also very regular. After they sent their husband away, 1 hour to do housework, we got back together at 10 o'clock for dance practice. In the afternoon, basking by the pool. Not to mention how humid those days were, but the only requirement is not to leave the community. But after a long time, Alice also felt a little bored. He had an idea while doing housework that day. He was going to go around the neighborhood. Then he got on a free sightseeing bus. After a while, it came to the end of the community. The driver reminded him that it was time to go back. Then Alice suddenly discovered a plane crashed into a nearby hill. He asked the driver to rush over to help, but the driver said he couldn't change the route without authorization. Alice thinks he is simply unreasonable. So I got out of the car alone. He kept going along the road. I didn't even notice the warning sign. Soon he came to a barren land, but after searching for a long time, he couldn't find any trace of the plane, only to see a strange building on the top of the mountain. Driven by curiosity, Alice walked up with difficulty. I don't know how long it's been. He finally came to the front of the building, but there's no one inside. When she put her hands on the glass, a red light suddenly appeared in front of him, and then you lose consciousness. When she wakes up, I found myself lying in bed at home. Husband is cooking dinner in the kitchen at the moment. Alice asked herself how she got back, but her husband said she had been sleeping at home, never went out at all. Here my husband explained this. Alice suspects that it was a dream just now. The next day, strange things happened again. The woman is concentrating on cleaning the glass. I didn't notice that the wall behind me was slowly approaching, just a blink of an eye. She was squeezed against the glass and couldn't move. Fortunately, everything quickly went back to the way it was. It turned out that this was all her hallucination. Then the phone in the house suddenly rang. The call was from the neighbors Margaret. She told Alice not to trust anyone. We must find a way to escape from here. But Alice didn't take it seriously. Then he hung up the phone. The next day, in dance class, she found her reflection in the mirror. He actually became a Margaret. Just when Alice looked confused, the Margaret suddenly hit the glass with her head. Ah! The scene in front of her scared Alice completely. But the other neighbors were looking at him strangely. When Alice turned her head, I just realized that everything just now was still an illusion. The flustered Alice quickly left the dance studio, ready to go to Margaret's house to find out, but found that the Margaret is standing on the roof at the moment. The Margaret turned around and looked at the little one. She glanced at him and then wiped her neck with a knife. In the evening, Alice told her husband what had happened. Husband thinks he has a mental problem. He also said that the Margaret just fell. It won't be long before he recovers and leaves the hospital. Neither of them convinced the other, so they had this huge fight. The next day, the husband invited the doctor to check Alice's body, and it turned out there was nothing unusual about him. At this time, Alice deliberately brought up the matter of the Margaret. The doctor suddenly glanced at Alice's husband. Then he said that the Margaret was indeed admitted to the hospital because of a fall. She also told Alice not to worry too much. When the doctor opened the handbag, Alice saw a medical certificate about the Margaret in it, so she made excuses to keep her husband and doctor away. Then he stole the medical certificate, but some important information on it has been all erased. He only saw one. This person refused treatment. Final warning has been issued. After that, Alice never saw the Margaret again. Even the Margaret's husband mysteriously disappeared. The next day is the community's monthly song and dance evening. All the men here bring their wives, because they are all programmers from the same company. Everyone is enjoying the beautiful night to the fullest. Only Alice looked depressed. Alice finally figured out the truth of the matter. But the boss thinks that Alice has mental problems. A good party just broke up like this. Come home at night. Alice wants to leave. This is the land of right and wrong. The husband thought for a moment and agreed to her request. But when the two arrived in the car, husband suddenly said sorry. Then a few men in red appeared. They couldn't help but pull Alice out and bring her to the table. In a trance, Alice heard that someone was going to delete her memory. Then I slowly lost consciousness. When he woke up the next day, back in the community again, as if nothing happened last night. Soon the community was restored to its former order. But this day, husband suddenly hummed a song after get off work. Alice thinks this song is very familiar. Then he finally remembered everything. It turns out that Alice's real identity is a doctor. The husband is a long unemployed programmer. The lives of the two have been very difficult, so there's often a conflict. The husband learned that day It's a technology company called Victory. Recruiting subjects. Just bring their equipment. Human consciousness. You will enter the virtual community created by the company. Live here without worrying about your livelihood. Because all the supplies are provided by the company. So want to chat with someone, might as well try it. The reason why men go out to work every day is to return to the real world. Maintain the physical functions of yourself and your wife in reality. But the husband knew that Alice would not agree to participate in the experiment, so he took advantage of Alice's sleep, forced her into the virtual world. Alice, who learned the truth, was infuriated, but the husband, still trying to justify. Alice is utterly disappointed with her husband, so he grabbed the water glass on the table and threw it at him. The link is also instantly disconnected. Then Alice robbed a car, trying to escape from this dreadful community. The people in red chased after receiving the news, but Alice doesn't know how to return to the real world. Suddenly, he remembered the round building he had found on the top of the hill before. Maybe that's the gateway to the outside world. Then Alice drove quickly over there, and he made it to the top. And before the man in red catches him, put your hands on the glass. Just like that, back in the real world, in the virtual community. Hundreds of other couples. Where should they go?